Welcome to War Cradle Studios. I'm Lee and with me is Stuart.
Hello.
And today we're talking about a new outlaw posse, the Deadly Seven.
We are. Fantastic posse. Goes really well with all sorts of the factions in the game. Particularly well suited for teaming up with the Enlightened, as well as being a core part of an outlaw for our faction.
Yes. Now the posse itself is made up of lots of faces. So there's a lot of character not only in the models but in the way that you can play with this posse. And we'll take a look at the first of them now, who is the boss of this posse, which is Earle Shepherd.
Yeah, fantastic model and fantastic character. So Earle Shepherd's got one of those, convoluted is maybe not the right word, but certainly an extended backstory. Started off serving in the Union Army during the Civil War, fought and was given all sorts of decorations and citations and things, and rose through the ranks. Once the war had ended though, walked away from the whole thing, didn't stay in there for a cosy desk job, left the Union Army, turned his back on all the bloodshed and destruction from the Civil War, and has embraced a new life. Or so he thought. He embraced a life in the law. So he served as a sheriff and worked trying to keep law and order. That lasted for a while until his core beliefs were tested. You see, Earle Shepherd's one of these kind of people who he judges people about how they behave, their actions when he sees them, rather than actually anything that's been said about them or anything they're alleged to have done in the past or backstory and baggage, because as his own history shows, which he keeps a closely guarded secret.
A common thing for this posse.
Yeah. But so his backstory shows that there's, you're not defined by your past, you're defined by who you are and how you behave in the present. And he was put in a situation as a sheriff where he was told and had to act based on judgments that other people had made about somebody from their past actions, rather than what he was seeing and what he believed from his own observations.
Yeah, and it was the next character in this posse, Black Blood, who was responsible for the change of heart that Earle Shepherd found himself throwing in his lawman badge. Now you can see from the images that Black Blood is a member of the warrior nation, or at least was, and he's not had a good life, has he?
No. So Black Blood's story is quite sad. So as a backstory to him, as a young lad, he was his entire settlement was attacked, and he was scalped, which was a common practice back there to kind of sow fear and injury and things, and shame, absolutely, to the people. He was scalped, and normally he would have died, even though you might think, okay, you've lost all the hair off your head, but because actually it's not just the hair, it's your scalp, it's all the tissue and everything else. Lots of blood loss, and the shock can kill people, and obviously we're talking 1870s. Infection and what have you, disease would have killed most people. Black Blood didn't die though. I mean, he's only a sort of a young lad, not even a teenager at this point, and he survived. And it was his sheer force of will. It was his anger, his want for revenge that kept him alive. Fear has that way, doesn't it, of kind of evolving over time and into becoming a kind of a source of anger.
Well, it's certainly become something, because as you can see, he's wielding a bow which is firing guided arrows of pure malice.
Yeah, hate arrows. Yeah, he's channeled his spirit energy. The warrior nation see the kind of the psychic energy or what have you that they draw from the Great Spirit. They see that as spirit energy. So his spirit energy is manifesting itself in those kind of bolts. Most warrior nation, as you know, it tends to be a blue energy. With Black Blood, it's red, which you only really see that in characters like Wickersasny and others. So there's clearly that hate or that corruption that there
is a taint within him, but it's nowhere near as out there as Wickersasny or somebody who's fully Dark Nation.
He doesn't have giant bat wings. No, that's true. But certainly he's channeling his rage and his upset and his aggression, and he's using that to fuel those shots from his bow. It makes him fantastic in terms of hunting people down. In terms of, I mean, you've got arrows, ammunition with that eagle look on it that's going around corners, it's knocking on doors, it's waiting for you to open them, and then it's getting you in the throat and things. So he's a fantastic hunter, he's a fantastic assassin. And as he's gotten older through the years, before he meets with Earle Shepherd, he has seen all sorts of contracts and things that he's fulfilled. He's murdered his way across the frontier. But that past has caught up with him. So when Earle Shepherd meets him as a sheriff, Black Blood has been caught and he's due to be hung for his crimes. However, the Black Blood that Earle Shepherd meets is a Black Blood that he isn't just killing indiscriminately now. Actually, a lot of that rage has left him. He still has that anger inside him, but he's got most of the demons from his past. He's kind of excised them over the years, and I wouldn't say he's not repentant, but he kills if he has to. He doesn't kill indiscriminately anymore, and in fact he was caught in slightly altruistic circumstances where he could have gotten away, but he chose not to in order to save some people. And Earle Shepherd is then faced with that difficult thing where he's heard, and in speaking to Black Blood's quite honest about his past and what he's done, but then he sees the actions, and from the reports of how he was captured, that he's a different person now. And it's for Earle Shepherd, it's weighing those two up, and that, because of his own personal code, that puts him in a difficult situation, and he does something quite drastic about it.
Well, if Black Blood and Earle Shepherd can be considered the founding members of the Deadly Seven, there is a third to this happy little band, and that would be Brutus.
Yeah, so Brutus, the original Brutus, was a companion of Earle Shepherd during the Civil War.
Less mechanical than he looks now.
he was a real dog, but obviously over the years, Brutus has been replaced. The original Brutus has died and been replaced by a canine attack dog.
Gradually, a leg here, a tail there, but eventually it's the Brutus that you have, the original Brutus that you started with.
Yeah, he's not quite like Trigger's broom. No, it was more like Brutus died, and then he was issued with a canine attack dog. The canine being automata, they develop personality and quirks over the years. So Brutus has, over the several years now, he's been with Earle Shepherd. He's developed his own personality, his own way of being things. And if you took a load of canine automata, just in the way he behaves in that, Earle Shepherd could tell which was Brutus and which was just a regular off-the-shelf attack dog.
If you couldn't know, there's a couple of giveaways, because there's the skull attached to his cranium and some tanned leather, which is probably of unusual provenance.
Yeah, that would be Brutus's. That's 100% dog leather. The change, it's difficult because we can't judge how these characters are from the point of view of where we are in the 21st century, kind of looking back on things and, oh, how barbaric, how whatever, how macabre. Life was different back then, and the motivations for having Brutus being the way he is, I'm sure there was a degree of intimidation, but there's also sentimental. I guess it comes more from the line where the old taxidermy.
Yes, it's taxidermy with character. Something a little different.
Animatronic taxidermy.
Yeah, exactly.
But regardless, you're right. Brutus makes the third member, and it was at that point. So Brutus, Earle Shepherd busts Black Blood out of jail, and the three of them together go off, and they become the core of the Deadly Seven.
But before that, they joined another outlaw posse.
Well, they did. Earle Shepherd and Black Blood were briefly members of the Wayward Eight, and I mean, without getting into were they the Wayward Six, and did they? We're not going to go into that right now. We can talk about that when we talk about the Wayward Eight. But in terms of Black Blood and Earle Shepherd, they joined the Wayward Eight. They met up with Marcus Wayward, rode with them for a time, and that was really where Earle Shepherd and Black Blood got to understand the life of the outlaw, the life of going from job to job, taking contracts, making a bit of money, and that then got them in good stead. Their attitude and their skills were a slightly different fit for the Wayward Eight, and so there came a natural point where
the abrasive rubbing up against Marcus Wayward's unusual sense of duty was probably one of the things that precipitated that split.
Yes, and Earle Shepherd and Black Blood then made their own way off and formed the Deadly Seven.
So the next member of the Deadly Seven that we're going to look at is one of my personal favourites, and that's Razors Lee. Who,
is it because his surname's Lee?
No, not at all. It's just the pose of the model, the way that he's got one of his arms behind his back, and you think that maybe that was just for balance, but no, he's a rather underhand fighter, and he's got a couple of knives ready to flick out whoever he's taking on.
Yeah, he's a skilled knife thrower. So most of the Deadly Seven were recruited through meeting various disreputable people in taverns and saloons and what have you across the frontier, or through a couple of them. We'll explain how they came into the posse, but certainly Lee would have skills that are a mixture of. He's got all the skills of a gunfighter, but he obviously has the finesse of a sort of a circus knife thrower. So he's an interesting combination. He's not a particularly vocal member of the Deadly Seven, tends to speak more with his actions rather than words, but again, there's an advantage to throwing a knife to resolve something as to shooting somebody with a very loud gun. So he's quite good for sorting out problems before a lot of people are even aware that they're a problem. So he's got that sense of reading people and seeing where the threats are going to be, sometimes even before Earle Shepherd or Black Blood are aware of them. So he's a very valuable member of the posse. So
at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have a lady with a very large gun.
Yes, so Idina Vannez she could not be any different, I think, to
in temperament
Razors Lee,
or armament by the looks of things.
Yeah, she is always acting like she has something to prove. She's very loud with. That repeater grenade launcher is quite a loud weapon. She hefts it with some finesse and skill, though. Always first into a room in terms of making sure that
sweeping the corners.
Yeah, absolutely. Checking for anything that might come out the ceiling, and she's a really strong fighter in the posse. She has an interesting backstory. Again, Earle Shepherd tends to not worry about the baggage, and the members can drop in and out of the Deadly Seven. It's not that common that the Deadly Seven is all together as a group. It's quite often that individual members will drop out of the posse to deal with some personal issues that have come up, or some of their past has tracked them down. Vannez is one of these, and she seems to have some backstory. We don't know where Vannez is from. She doesn't tend to talk about it. We think that she probably doesn't come from Mexico, and that she probably comes from either Chile or it could be Guatemala or some. It's certainly South America, but exactly where in South America we're not sure. However, she's clearly got problems with the Espinosas, who are close allies of Pancho Villa. So the bloody Espinosas, Felipe Espinosa in particular, have clashed with Vannez, and although the Deadly Seven and Pancho Villa have been known to work on contracts together, there's always that frisson of violence, and she keeps reaching for a knife to plunge into any one of their backs at any one time. So there's definitely an undercurrent, and Earle Shepherd has to keep on his toes to make sure that her fiery temperament is kept in check.
If it's big guns that you like, she's not the only one who brings a big gun to the posse. We have another gentleman with an even larger weapon.
Do you mean Knox?
I do mean Knox.
Knox
knocks them down.
Very good. See who did that. Knox is fantastic. So Knox is again, he has a military background the same as Earle Shepherd. However, unlike Shepherd, who mentions that he was in the Union but doesn't really talk about that, Knox seems to go to great lengths to talk about this extensive military service that he has, but he's always kind of hazy as to who he fought for, whether he fought for the Confederates or for the Union.
Shiny medals look really nice on my coloured uniform.
Yeah, and it's interesting because all the various former Confederates and former Union officers and soldiers that the Deadly Seven have met over the years, I mean, bearing in mind the Wayward Eight have Confederate links, none of them recall ever having served with Knox. But he's clearly acquired a military background from somewhere, but it's a bit of a mystery as to where. expert in demolitions, expert in...
Obviously.
yeah, not just with the guns, but also booby traps, explosives, so sapping, blowing out bridges, whatever's needed to be done, blowing holes in banks.
Or people.
Yeah, Knox is your guy, particularly as he has Petunia, his beloved heavy artillery that he carries around with him, hefts with relative ease. Yeah, Knox is great.
We need muscle in a posse just to bat the bigger guys around, and the Deadly Seven have got that in spades, haven't they?
They do. Well, they have it in Bear Men. Yeah, Kodiak. Kodiak is Canadian from the accent. He is a towering man. We don't quite know what he is. He
doesn't appear to be a Carcosa, does he?
No,
because he's far too human in aspect.
He is. He's also not a skin shifter or a spirit walker.
He hasn't really got the temperament for it.
No, he doesn't seem to have that kind of psychic spirit energy type vibe going on. He just appears to be a big bear man and kind of a little bit. And he's not like a guy, just a big Canadian dude with a bit of a body hair problem. I mean, he's got claws and fangs and stuff.
Just for scale, he's drinking cup. That's not a regular size cup, is it?
No. That's larger than a man's head. Yeah, he's a vast figure. He's easily in real life he would easily be 8-9 feet tall.
He could probably hammer a person into the ground like plunging a stake to hook up a tent or something.
Yeah, he's
pile driver into the top of his skull, and if there's any skull left, just keep pounding it into the ground.
He's massive, and he's not one of these gentle bear-like men either. He's got a real
proper angry.
Yeah, he's got real temper on him as well. But for whatever reason, he's keeping that in check, and he can function with the rest of the Deadly Seven, and he's a massive asset to them because he's so huge. He's like the bruiser, the blitzer of the posse. So he's quite capable in combat, particularly with his custom made axe that he wields, and again with his contacts, with his survival skills, he can even cook up a mean raccoon. So he's worth keeping in the posse for sure.
So all the characters we've introduced you to so far are quite an eclectic bunch, and of course they're all faces, so they can be used separately on their own in other posses, which allow outlaws. But probably the most unusual of the unusual bunch is our final face that we're looking at, who is Faraday.
Yeah, so Faraday's a little bit different to all of the other members of the Deadly Seven, except for Brutus, because he's not human, he's not even organic. So Faraday is a former UR-21 automata. So he and his type fought during the Civil War. They were created by the Covenant of the Enlightened. And the automata were used by or sold to both the Confederacy and the Union in that horrific war that took place. Once the war was over, the Union had by that point technologically moved on to later models of automata. So
it was now obsolete, essentially.
Their ones were obsolete, and the Confederacy had effectively become demilitarised, and so all of their automata were scrapped. So Faraday, or the UR automata that became Faraday, found himself on a scrap pile at the smelters, and from the way he tells it, the first memories he has is of waking up and being aware that he and all the ones around him were due to go on the into the big smelting cauldron. Yeah, absolutely. So he doesn't really recall much of his life when he was just an automata. For whatever reason, he had his Pinocchio moment and became self-aware, which is... So automata are... they have programming which replicates awareness, and they have their quirks in their behaviour and their actions and things can mimic a form of sentience. And they are aware of themselves insofar as they understand what they are, but they don't have true self-awareness, or it's difficult to believe that they have true self-awareness like a person. The more poetic might say that they lack a soul. Faraday is even more of a blurring those lines though, because if he's just got quirks in his programming, they're incredibly quirky. And not only that,
he's been online for longer than any other automata of his make, hasn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, certainly, yeah, there are other automata from the Civil War knocking around, but they are really glitchy and psychotic, most of them.
And they don't have his dress sense.
No, no, but he certainly has a proper personality, depth of character, more so than you would expect. He's vastly exceeded his programming. He makes repairs to himself. He's had to, because he was in pretty bad state when he woke up on that smelting pile. When he escaped, there was two Union guys loading the various automata and throwing them into the cauldron to melt them. He had to escape. The way he tells it, he just kind of made his way out as quickly as he could.
But no one's seen those men since.
Well, no, and the impression you get is that they ended up in the cauldron, and there's the smell of cooking bacon as he made his way out. But yeah, so he's got no qualms with taking human life. It's not a problem. He seems more concerned with making sure that he's operational, he's up and running. He's quite happy to strip down other automata as well to improve or upgrade his components. So his parts, he's not a true UR21 automata anymore. He's very much evolved beyond that, not just in terms of his personality and programming, but physically as well. He's able to draw weapons with alarming proficiency, and his skills and expertise. Were he human, he would have been an invaluable member of the Deadly Seven. As an automata, he's invaluable to the Deadly Seven. He's durable and exceptionally proficient at whatever Earle Shepherd needs him to do. So he's a much welcome member of the team, if not somewhat quirky.
So that was the Deadly Seven. We hope you found that informative, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye.